Banega Swasth India is one of the longest running public health campaigns that believes that only a Swachh India can be a Swasth India. One of the critical issues facing our planet is the amount of waste that we all generate, and also obviously its disposal. With garbage clogging our mountains, rivers, oceans, there's also a threat of the man-made, these huge man-made garbage mountains in the form of dump sites as well as landfills. In fact, these are, sometimes we call them, they are actually ticking time bombs of environmental and health hazards. So joining us for a very special interview today, we have with us Saumya Roy, author of a recent book, Mountain Tales, Love and Loss in the Municipality of Castaway Belongings. Thank you so much, Saumya, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Saumya, first of all, before we, start chatting and, tell us about the book and its setting. It's one of the oldest and the largest landfill in the country, Deonar in Mumbai. Tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So it's about 123 years old this year. When it was set up, as you can imagine, by the British administration, because there was a plague at that time, and they in order to get to the root of the plague, they figured that there was a lot of filth in the city. There were rats carrying this filth, and therefore there were rats around the city carrying the plague that moved around in filth. And so to deal with that bout of plague, they thought, why not we transport all the garbage to the edge of the city, like really outside the city? And they bought about 823 acres of land in this village called Deonar, edged by the sea on all the sides. And as it often happens with waste around the world, from that point onwards, the city is just thinking that waste is going there.
Yeah.
And so we can continue to consume and, throw away things, and they're going somewhere out of sight where we can't see it, somewhere where it's smelling, but we can't smell it. And then also the city has encroached it. So at this point, Deonar is about little over 300 acres large. The garbage is piled up. It's about 120 feet high, some of the garbage mountains. So it's not, it's literally mountains of garbage. There have over the years been many plans to remediate this garbage. But for various reasons, including court cases, the quantum of waste really increasing quite tremendously, it has been a pretty insurmountable challenge to deal with Deonar. And there are waste pickers who live, there are slums all around the garbage mountains, and their only form of livelihood really is to work and take away the only garbage that leaves this place is taken away by the bare hands of these waste pickers. So you can imagine the health hazards that it has for waste pickers and also for the city.
Saumya, in your introduction, you referred to Deonar as a vast township of trash growing invisibly in plain sight, mountains of 120 feet high. You followed stories of 4 families for 8 years. 8 years is a really long time, particularly Farzana's story. What made you zero in on the setting, and also, why did you choose Farzana as your protagonist?
I wanted to see what was their business like, but it became increasingly clear to me that these were lives made of our thrown away, everything that we think, I don't need it anymore, I can do without this, and we just put it away. Their lives were made of that. Like, I could see them using ripped jeans. And so it was, to me, it was saying something about life itself, life as it is today, right? What gives meaning to our life? Like, India is one of the largest markets for cell phones. Cell phones land up there. They use those thrown away cell phones. Food they find. So it was as if a mirror image of our life in the city. They were living off of this, but also it was making them sick. So it was almost questioning the life that we live in our cities, because that waste was making them sick. It was giving them cuts. It was giving them bruises. It was giving them maybe tuberculosis, asthma, breathlessness. And yet it was coming, because how do we stop consuming? And so that's what drew me to the story, that it was saying something about what our world is today, what our society is today. And so these were 4 families that I followed for 7 or 8 years. And Farzana, increasingly, she's not a very verbal person, but when I met her at 13, she was tall, gangly, awkward, not very verbal, but full of energy, and her life consumed by trash. And as you see the book, I follow her even from the time that she was born. on, she literally learned to walk on those mountains of garbage, found like her first toys on those mountains of garbage, and she shared a lot of very happy memories also, like maybe a lot of food that we now consume, like say imported apples. She was almost seeing the city from this funnel, the other end, that we throw away these apples maybe because they've reached expiry date, but she would pick them up and eat them. And it was making her life, but at the same time it was sickening her. And so we could see this trajectory of our city, our world, our trash, how it was making these lives, but also completely
breaking
them, shriveling them,
breaking
sickening them, breaking them, as you said.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine, especially since you were meeting, I mean, 8 years is a long time. I'm sure you formed that bond, that connection. So Deonar, despite being on the fringes of the city, takes center stage in your book. Take us through the socio-economic life that you saw unfold in the 8 years when you were working on the book, when you were meeting these people.
I would say that at first they had very happy memories of this place, because that is their life. I did want to show in this book that how tremendous joy and tremendous suffering are so tightly packed together. They thought that gold from the city reached there, diamonds, as you know, Mumbai is a great diamond marketplace, and so they believe diamond dust arrived there, and that belief in luck, that if only Bombay is a city of dreams, and if only you looked a little further in those 16 million tons of trash, you could find diamond dust. If only you worked a night shift, you could find gold rings, and everybody had heard of somebody who had found it. And so to me it was important to show that, because those were the early stories that they would tell us. The slums around them grew, they encroached into the garbage itself, and you can imagine what kind of life can you build on trash, full of cuts, full of bruises, full of accidents, and yet with no option but to keep working.
Yeah.
So that was the backdrop, and I think the fires in 2016 made their life even more precarious.
Yeah, true.
Because there were police cases made out saying that the waste pickers had lit the fires, which they may or may not have. But certainly it also, I began thinking of writing this because I thought that they may have lit it, but also we created this place. Yeah. We created it.
It is our waste. I think we need to take responsibility of that. Saumya, in fact, you document the various court cases and efforts to reduce the size of these mountains, also setting up a waste to energy plants, which may have shut down, completely now. As someone who has had a ringside view to the proceedings, why have these efforts not materialized? What is your take on that? And despite court orders and guidelines, like we have the solid waste management rules since 2016, but why don't you think these things have really materialized on ground? Why don't we see a change?
Partly because waste is increasing. And so if whatever you plan for, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes it's also not all. If you think of it as something that could be profitable, I think around the world, waste has not necessarily been profitable. We don't necessarily have a profitable model for managing waste, although I did hear of people telling me about particular incidents. But actually, funnily, wherever I traveled in the world, I found that waste management was a problem. It's only that in wealthy countries or cities, they have the money to ship it to third world countries.
Yes. And also the quantity.
The quantity in the West might be much more than the quantity here, actually.
But they ship it to the
third world, just as we ship it from wealthy parts of the city to poorer parts of the city.
Yeah.
I think now there is a more concerted effort. Waste, I would say that earlier it's possible that waste was not the top priority for municipal administrations, given everything they were dealing with. And when they turned back to see the crisis, the mountains were like really huge and not easy to remediate anymore, and not easy to create a profitable model out of. So what could really be the model for this is a technocratic question, but certainly one that I think deserves more attention.
And in fact immediate attention, that something needs to be done. And again, like I said earlier, it's not only the government. I think it's more about each one, at least the little bit, whatever one can contribute. We have cities like Indore that have successfully implemented waste segregation and have gotten rid of dump sites and their legacy waste. Government of India Swachh Bharat 2.0 sets the goal of making, when we talk about making cities garbage free, one of the criteria for which is to get rid of these legacy waste in, landfills as well as dump sites. How do you perceive this goal can be achieved on a larger scale across India, like we spoke about Indore?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's really wonderful that the government has given this a sense of priority,
Yeah.
that this is something important, that while growth is important, sustainability is important as well, that these are twin goals to be pursued, and that they can go in step. So I think that's really wonderful that they are giving it attention. It's possible that every landfill may need something different, every city may need something different. I mean, I wouldn't venture to give a perfect technocratic solution. There are waste picking communities around the country, everywhere in Delhi, in Ahmedabad, in Ghazipur, in Indore even. And so as we think of solutions for waste, we also have to think of what happens to waste pickers who have so far provided a very private, very personal solution to our waste for all these years.
Absolutely. We need to think how do we get them in the mainstream, I mean, it's not about just thinking about the waste, but how do we get them also in their way of living? Saumya, I know we spoke about it in the beginning. You did talk to us about, how about the Deonar, but even you traced Deonar genesis to the British era and how plague the breakout in the then port city of Bombay in the 19th century. And now, going back, of course, you told us about that, but now we're in the middle of a pandemic. How did COVID-19, how do you think the outbreak affects the people of the garbage mountain and mountains themselves?
So many of them are continuing to work there. As you know, the lockdown was pretty severe in Mumbai. And so many of them finding jobs outside there became harder.
Yeah, more challenging.
And so many of them continued to work there, or tried to continue to work there. Some of them told me that there was even like PPE kids coming there. So in the rain, they would wear PPE kits and pick garbage. Sometimes it became harder for them to find markets for the garbage that they collected. So at home, they would have, when I would go, they would have bags filled with garbage, thinking that they would sell it, but they were not able to sell it because wholesale markets were closed. So it was making their life more precarious. Their already precarious lives more precarious. But they wanted to continue working. It was as if they imagined that COVID-19 did not exist so that they could continue to work. Although I'm sure some of them did have it. But I wrote a story once for a website, and I asked them that, how is COVID affecting you? And one of them told me that, bimari nahi to berozgari maar degi.
I think that is a challenge with a lot of people had, even when we were talking. For some people, they didn't really have a choice. It was obviously it's their way of living. I mean, their way of earning, and that's how they live. It's not. What kind of health issues you witnessed, people face there because they're living, right near this huge mountain of trash.
Almost all the characters in the book had tuberculosis at some point or the other. Some of them had multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis. Two of the characters in the book passed away while writing the book. So certainly tuberculosis was pretty common, although there's not a very direct link between tuberculosis and waste, but certainly when their lungs it could be that their lungs are impacted from the work that they do, and being already weak, they're an easy home for illnesses such as tuberculosis. So many of them almost all of them have asthma, breathing trouble, constipation, poor eyes, cuts, bruises. Many of them have suffered from accidents. If you ask them that, do you have you ever had an accident? Almost all of them will laugh and giggle and show you that, oh yeah, here's the time when a whole glass bottle went into my calf, or here's the time when, a truck tire went over me. And many of them do have memories like that. But in terms of chronic illnesses, these were the ones that I saw. Like I said, almost all the characters in this book have had tuberculosis or have it right now. Life expectancy in this ward was 39 years in I think 2003 or 4.
Which is very
which is compared to about 65 years for the rest of India at that point. When I looked at more recent data, it had not, while it was not clear that, it has certainly not gone up by too much. It might be in its mid-40s now, but it doesn't seem to have gone up by much. So
way
it
below,
remains
like
below the
rightly
national
said.
average.
And a lot of health issues.
Lots of health issues.
I mean, most of them. And again, I guess even not having proper treatment, access to, healthcare. I think that's another huge issue. Okay, Soumya, just, what are some of the significant environmental hazards of the man-made garbage mountains?
Yeah.
I think that's really important because, of course, we've spoken about the rag pickers, I mean, their health. But if I specifically ask you about the garbage mountains, the environmental aspect.
Yeah, I talk about it in the book, like the halo of the mountain, which is really a toxic cocktail of gases that are let out by decomposing garbage. So landfills around the world are a large source of methane, which is one of the major greenhouse causing gases. It's a cause for global warming. And so we are seeing just this summer increasing temperatures around the world. And methane is a gas that causes global warming. You do see other harmful gases such as hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, which is also a greenhouse causing gas. They're in pretty high, higher than permissible amounts there. That causes pollution, that causes there are a cause of greenhouse gases and global warming. So certainly landfills are a reason, and Deonar itself might be a reason for it. I also found some studies saying that in Delhi, for example, when they looked at causes for pollution, about 10 to 15% of particulate matter comes from garbage fires.
Yes, garbage fires, and also because I also feel, I mean, it's not, of course, pollution, yes, and that's why I guess they have so many, like you said, breathing, their lungs are weaker, so they're prone, obviously immunity is low, but also the water gets affected. Because the waste at some point, I'm guessing it keeps seeping down, and the water, there have been studies as well where the water is also contaminated, and obviously they're living close to that area, which again, like you said, their gut is weak. I mean, health issues, because that's another, I guess. Soumya, just a last question. And you've said in your book that one person's trash is another person's scrap. So in the future, if the future is meant to be garbage-free cities, then what will become of the numerous characters in your book, like Farzana and her family, who know really nothing beyond life on these mountains? Their survival does depend on these mountains. What role do you see for them if cities are to go garbage-free?
Sure, the solid waste rules say that waste pickers are to be integrated in waste management systems in the city. So I feel that in the modern new systems that the city creates, certainly there should be allied jobs that can be given to waste pickers. Actually, what are called material recovery facilities, driving, segregation. These are all jobs that can be done by waste pickers because they do have a skill. Actually, segregating and sorting waste is a good skill, and if they can do it in a hygienic way, then I think that would be a good job for them to do. And over a period of time, I think really, I hope that Farzana's children are not going to be in this business, but really get educated and, maybe do something very different from her.
Absolutely. I mean, really, we hope that. And like you said, getting them into the mainstream, even if it's waste solid management, obviously there has to be a way of earning for them, integrating them in the mainstream, like I said before, very important, like a campaign when we talk about leaving no one behind. And definitely the waste pickers are a very, very important part of our society. I think we all should be grateful for them because, we've seen Soumya many times, even in Delhi, there have been, where they've gone on strike and the city's in a mess because it's very easy to generate waste, but I think hats off to them because managing waste is the challenge.
Yeah, they are managing it because we don't want to manage it, right? They are managing it for us.
They are managing
for
it.
The city.
Like you said, I mean, they're doing our dirty job. I mean, yeah. But it was a pleasure, Soumya, for speaking with us today, and I think also enlightening us. I'm sure the book obviously makes each one of us think. It makes you really realize that. I mean, of course, you followed them for 8 years. You've taken a long time to write the book, but it definitely is important that each one of them respect their work. But at the same time, I think we also start taking responsibility of our waste.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.